Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my August wrap up. I didn't read as many books in August as I normally do, but I'm still happy with all of the books I did read. I read some longer ones and I have read some really good books. I had a hard time debating which one was going to be my favorite this month because there's two that were really big contenders, so I'll talk about both. First, we'll talk about the stats and then we'll talk about the books. So let's get into the video. For stats, like I mentioned, I've read 18 books, 8 of which were since my mid-month wrap-up. And I'm gonna say that Paint It All Red was my favorite, which is the last book in the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey, just because it wrapped up like a really good series to me, and it was just everything that I wanted in that book. But the other book that was like a really close second, which I also gave 5 stars, was Daisy Hates, because I absolutely loved it. I wasn't convinced of the series until I read that book. I know that's sort of an unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people prefer Magnolia Parks, but for me, I preferred Daisy and Christian. I really didn't like Christian in the first book until I started to get his point of view, and then I also just absolutely love Julian, so you get his point of view in those books too. It's also a lot more romantic suspense, and the only reason I didn't make that one my favorite is just because it's not the last one in the series, so it didn't fully wrap things up, but I did absolutely love it. I read a total of 5,103 pages and read 63.7 hours of audio. I read 4 digital books, 7 audiobooks, and 7 physical books. And my top 5 genres were romance, contemporary, thriller, erotica, and fantasy, which brings my total for the year up to 168 books, which I'm super happy about. I am definitely going to hit my goal of, I think I set my goal at like 225 books, so I definitely really going to hit that by the end of the year, even though there's still quite a few books that I need to read. Now let's talk about the books. The first book that I read in the second half of the month was Duke's Apparel, which is the 6th book in the Royals of Forsyth University series by Angel Lawson and Samantha Rue. This is the last book in the Dukes trilogy within that world, and I did definitely like this trilogy more than I liked the first ones, which I think was the Lords. But I'm really excited for the Princes, which is the next trilogy. I don't know why, I just am very excited to read that one. I feel like the books just keep getting better and better as they go on, so I feel like the books are going to get even better in the third one, and it's just like set up the entire world, because in this one I could get the point of view of both the Dukes and the Lords, and they sort of teamed up, and now I'm just waiting for all of the different houses to like get their point of view and figure out what's going on in each of them, because it just makes the world a lot better. These books are probably a little too dark for me personally. They're, especially the first ones in a trilogy, they definitely are darker. This one I really liked because a lot of the like darker relationship elements were not in it. I also did find it a little bit slow at some points, in that the ending wrapped up quite fast, so the pacing was a little off to me for this book, but I did overall really enjoy it, and it's just a really fun roller coaster of a series, so I give it 4 stars. The next book I read was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. This is a thriller, so it's a little away from my genre. I feel like I actually read quite a few like fall reads. I read like quite a few fantasy and thriller books this month. I don't know, I guess I was in a fall mood already in August. But I did really like this book. I definitely did not see the ending coming. I don't know how people predicted the ending of this. I could not see it coming. I really liked it. There was a lot of twists and turns, and I definitely got thrown off the scent in who I thought it was. So that always makes a thriller more fun to me if I don't guess the ending. And honestly, I don't try to guess the ending, so if I do guess the ending, then you don't have to try that hard to fool me. So if I can guess the ending, then it's probably a little too predictable. So I really liked that. This book relied a lot on the reader like not knowing whether or not the main character was reliable, or the narrator was reliable, and I don't love that in thrillers, just because I've read quite a few that it ends up being like everything you read is pointless because the narrator was unreliable, and I just don't like that. But that's not the case in this book. but felt like it still relied on that a little too heavily. So that was the reason why I didn't love this book as much as I maybe would have otherwise. So I gave it 4 stars. It still was really good thriller. It just wasn't one of my favorites. Then I read Daisy Hates, which is the second book in the Magnolia Park's Universe series by Jessa Hastings, and I just spoke about this book, so I won't go too far into it. I loved it. I loved everything about it. Honestly, I can see why people are obsessed with this world. This one is a lot more romantic suspense than the Magnolia Park's books, and I just love it. I love it so much. I love all the characters in these books. I'm obsessed with the world. This one got me hooked, and I have been binging the series ever since. If you weren't sold on Magnolia Parks, I would say give Daisy Hates a shot, and if you still don't like it, then the series is probably not for you, but give Daisy Hates a shot because I wasn't convinced by Magnolia Parks. Okay, and then I read another thriller. I read The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Again, I really liked this book. I thought the concept of this was just so creepy and so fascinating. I loved it, but also it was really freaked me out, a lot of it. But I feel like it was a little too slow in the middle. I thought that up until the halfway mark, that could have been a thriller all on its own, and then between halfway and 3/4 of the way it sort of dragged for me, and then there was a wild twisting at the end. So I really liked the way that it was set up, how it was sort of like a podcast, because I listened to it as an audiobook, and I really recommend it that way because of the sort of podcast element of it. But it was so good. I really liked it. I thought it was dragged a little bit. This one sort of relies on an unreliable narrator, but also doesn't. So I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. I love Ashley Winstead's writing. I'm going to read all of her books now, both romance and thriller, because I think she is just amazing. This one's a good one for the fall time. The next book I read was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and I can't believe I haven't talked about this, hasn't been in a wrap-up yet, because I feel like I've talked about it quite a few times in other recommendation videos and stuff since then. So obviously I absolutely loved this book. Abby Jimenez can do no wrong in my opinion. She's just amazing. This story was so freaking sweet. It follows Jacob and Brianna, both of who are sort of they were in relationships where they just were made to feel like they weren't good enough, and to see them build through that relationship and work through it together was so amazing. And there's a quote in here that really just stuck with me, and I just really warmed my soul, and was love shows up. I don't know, it just really tugged at the heartstrings. They are just sweet characters. This book does rely heavily on a miscommunication trope, so that's the only knock against it, but overall I did think the miscommunication was done fairly realistically, so it didn't bug me that much. So I ended up giving it 4.75, just slightly knocked off for the miscommunication. And also just because I don't know if this is my absolute favorite. I don't know if I loved this or Part of Your World better. I think I loved Part of Your World just a little bit more. Then I reread Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is definitely the perfect fall read. So if you're looking to pick up a fall read, I definitely recommend this one. I'm going to be reading Hellbent really soon because I just really liked this book. I think I remember liking it more than I did the second go around, but that could have just been because I knew all the sort of twists and turns that were going to happen, whereas I didn't the first time, and I remember really liking that part. I do think that Leigh Bardugo added a lot of adult elements that didn't necessarily add to the story or anything like that, just for the sake of this is her first adult fantasy book. So I think that there were some things that were just uncomfy to read about that just didn't need to be there, in my opinion. But I overall did still really like it. I give it 4 stars. It's a very solid book. Then I read Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home, which is the third book in the Magnolia Parks universe by Jessa Hastings. This one goes back to Magnolia and BJ. I liked this book so much more than the first one, but that ending, I am in really big denial about that ending. I have actually just keep pushing it out of my mind. It did not happen, in my opinion, until we get another book that confirms it, or it gets confirmed in the Daisy Hate's book that I'm reading right now, it didn't happen. I refuse. I refuse to believe it. It did not happen. That is my conclusion about that ending. And if it does happen, that's just cruel. It's really cruel because I don't want to spoil it, but like, it's so freaking crazy. So I gave this one 4.75 stars just because I like the Daisy Hates and Christian Story line a bit better. Then I read The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I loved this book. I thought it was so freaking cute and sweet. It's really popular. Actually, Poston is a really popular author for a reason. I think her writing is absolutely beautiful. Like, there's a lot of quotes again in this book that I just would highlight the crap of if I had a physical copy, even though I don't even usually annotate books. I absolutely loved it. It's got a little bit of magical realism element to it. If that's something that's going to throw you off, I wouldn't say it's going to, because like, I personally don't always like magical realism in romance books, but this one really worked. It's a major plot point, but it's very minorly in the storyline, if that makes any sense. I absolutely loved it. The only thing I can say that was negative about this book is I did find it very predictable. Like, I kind of knew what was going to happen at every turn, but that doesn't mean it wasn't really enjoyable and really cute and sweet and amazing to read. So I gave it 4.75 stars. Okay, and those are all the books that I read in the second half of August. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite book that you read in August was. I would love to know. Subscribe if you're not already. Give this video a thumbs up because it really helps support my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.